This year with the manga scene, the big two names in Shonen Jump have been Chainsaw Man and JJK, or at least the two big up-and-coming names. But I think the third manga that should definitely be brought up amongst those two, especially Chainsaw Man, is Hell's Paradise. And what I'm about to say in no way, shape, or form is meant to be a diss towards Chainsaw Man, but more so a praise for Hell's Paradise. And I think Hell's Paradise does everything Chainsaw Man does, but yet without this super chaotic feel, and more so what seems to be a proper progression of narrative. Now, I was told, and I don't know this is true, so y'all can confirm it in the comments, that the author of Hell's Paradise was actually an assistant to Fujimoto, the author of Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, which would make a lot of sense because if you were to read Hell's Paradise and I weren't to tell you who the author was, you would have assumed that it was written by the same person who did Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch. It gives off that same feeling as, how the heck is this in a Shonen Jump magazine? This should not be in there. So fair warning, the story is extremely brutal, as again Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch was, and Hell's Paradise, I think, out of the three has by far the most nudity. So if that's something that bothers you, then maybe you don't want to check it out. But if that doesn't bother you, well, now I can actually get into the story. So we start off with the protagonist called Gabimaru. Now, Gabimaru is also given the nickname The Hollow, as he seems to be an emotionless and ruthless killer. And I think his progression as a character is definitely going from this ruthless and emotionless person to realizing his emotions make him strong. And if having emotions is something that makes you weak, then he adopts his weakness and it makes him stronger, on some philosophical type stuff. Now, by appearance, he does kind of seem like if Shigaraki was the protagonist, and later on in the series, you meet a character who pretty much looks like Bakugo, but the edge and cool factor is times by like 4. But the overall premise is this person, Gabimaru the Hollow, is seen as a criminal, and in order for him to get back with his wife, he needs to go to this island and find this elixir of life that grants immortality. Now, it's not just him, it's also all these other criminals who are being let loose on this island, and each of these criminals have a shinobi that watches over them. What they don't know is once they're put on this island looks like a paradise, but it is living hell. Hence the name Hell's Paradise. Now, part of the reason why this also gives major Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch vibes is the manga is a bit eccentric and a little bit, if I'm going to be honest, disturbing and weird with some of its characters. More so, and here I'm specifically talking about the antagonistic forces. But then again, I think the way that the author demonstrates the antagonistic force really drives home the point of how sick and twisted and just all sorts of messed up this island is. And as an antagonistic force, they really do an amazing job of pushing the conflict within the story. But the main shining factor here, as usually tends to be with most shonens, not all, is the great cast that this has. But when I say great cast, I honestly think Hell's Paradise has one of the strongest rosters in all of shonen that I've been able to see. None of the characters feel useless or stagnant. They all contribute something to the story and each have their own interesting backstory or subplot that contributes as to why they're here in the first place. They're all phenomenal side characters who contribute to their role and bring stuff to the story that is not only entertaining, but also ends up helping resolve certain conflicts, whilst also allowing the protagonist to shine. It's this beautiful dynamic and harmony that exists within the entire cast, and as the story continues and the narrative becomes more and more complex and all of the things start being pieced together and all the twists end up happening, it's beautiful to see them all become this team, and just seeing how the author was able to build things off in the end, or as of more recently compared to how things seemed in the beginning, shows the absolute brilliance, and I think a great example of how to write a story and build things up for a climax. Now, the fights are something that can feel a little bit messy due to the style of it, and not all of the fights, but some of them can feel a little bit chaotic and hard to follow. Other of them are really entertaining and easy to follow. Personally, I think Hell's Paradise is something that if it got an anime, it would be a beautiful anime, and I think it would explode into the mainstream. But another aspect that makes the manga so enjoyable and these fights enjoyable, and I think what's allowed the cast to shine, is that there's constant tension within the story. Other than a few minor examples that I won't get into because of spoilers, I think it's amazing that this series kind of is like JoJo's, where it doesn't matter who you are, you're not free from death, thus really helping to set the tone and the overall atmosphere for this manga and the setting in which they're in. I think the absolute creativity behind Hell's Paradise is absolutely amazing, especially behind the creatures and the monsters and everything surrounding that. but also just the way that it kind of throws things together. Hell's Paradise kind of feels like an amalgamation of all of your favorite things from different shonens, and then just amped up to a little bit more of a seinen. Like that's what Hell's Paradise feels like. It has everything. Like I brought it before, an extremely strong cast, one of the strongest that I've seen from a shonen in a long time. It has amazing character interactions, it has a lot of beautiful philosophical moments and memorable moments within the story as well. It has good fights, a good antagonistic force, and also an extremely well done plot. When setting foot upon this island along with the cast, you as the audience feel extremely lost. And you enter that island devoid of any of the knowledge of what's going on, what does this mean, and who's in charge. And by the time you're caught up to the story, it's going to be so sick seeing how everything was kind of pieced together. Everything from how the cast ends up meeting and grouping together, to how certain characters die, to everything being planned as to them being brought to this island. Basically, the overall scheme of the antagonists, it's just mind-blowing. It feels like a more cohesive and less chaotic Chainsaw Man, which I think for some people who didn't enjoy maybe at times the rushed or chaotic feeling Chainsaw Man did have, might really enjoy this. Now, don't get me wrong, Hell's Paradise is still chaos, but not in terms of the writing, just in terms of the feeling and some of the events that end up happening. But as for the actual narrative, the plot itself, it feels pretty easy to follow. I really did love this story, and I think it does everything greatly. Personally, I would say that even though we bring up Chainsaw Man a lot as the best thing to come out in Shonen Jump as of recently, I think Hell's Paradise is easily in that conversation. And I don't mean like in that conversation, but it's overwhelmingly no. I think it's really debatable if you throw Hell's Paradise in there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your thoughts was on this manga in the comment section below. And also like, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, that way you're notified whenever a new video pops up on some of your favorite anime, manga, or whatever content. As always, this has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.